Hi, what's up? I'm DJ Sixsmith. Welcome to the Sit Down. Gillian Jacobs here with us. Brand new movie coming out. Gillian, how are you?
I'm so happy to be with you. Thank you for having me.
You got it. So there's a lot to talk about with your story, but why don't we talk about the movie first? I Used to Go Here is coming out this week. It seems like a really interesting movie that allows people to go into the past and think about going back to college and delve into a lot of different personal issues in their world. What was it like putting this together?
It was really fun because, anytime you get to make an indie movie, it feels like a triumph, And so Chris Ray wrote and directed the script, which I really loved. My character is an author whose book comes out. That's actually the character's book in the
Nice.
background. And the character hates the cover. The book doesn't get very good reviews. Her whole book tour is canceled and she's really feeling like a total failure. And so the only kind of press invitation she has is to go back to her alma mater and give a talk. And so once she's there, she kind of gets sucked into this nostalgia for who she was in college. She meets all the current college students living in the house she used to live in college. And she's thinking, maybe I should just move back here and kind of maybe regress a little bit, but also they're treating me like I'm really successful and it feels really good. So that's sort of the dilemma she's faced with. And Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords plays her old professor who invites her back. And there's an amazing cast who play all the current college students. So yeah, it's called I Used to Go Here. It's available on demand.
Awesome. Yeah, it's pretty interesting when you are in a certain environment, even around a certain group of people, it immediately puts you back in a certain headspace, or you start to think differently about yourself. What was it like playing with that concept with your character who's like, all right, I'm kind of struggling here, but these people are treating me a little bit differently than I anticipated?
Well, I certainly understand the appeal of going towards the place where you're being treated like a huge success when you're feeling like a total failure. But I also understand that sometimes that means a little bit of regression and sort of ignoring the bigger issues in your life that you really need to figure out. And so I get the appeal, but I also understand why it's kind of dangerous.
So this movie was supposed to be at South by Southwest. You mentioned it's an indie film. What were some of the biggest challenges of just putting this thing together and also just dealing with the pandemic where people can't watch it in theaters?
Yeah, so even just getting the movie made, even before everything that's happened this year, was a challenge. And we didn't make it for a lot of money, but thankfully there's a really strong film community in Chicago where we shot it and where the writer director lives, and so you really felt like the support of the whole city when we were making it. So that was really great. And then yes, we were so excited to premiere the movie at South by Southwest, and then the city of Austin decided to close down the festival, which, in retrospect was completely the right decision. And I totally respect it. And so I think we're in a lucky percentage of films that actually got distribution, even with the festival being canceled. So luckily it's on demand, but we didn't get to have that opportunity of premiering the movie, watching it with an audience in the theater, and maybe some more of the sort of buzz that would have come out of having the film at the festival. But thank you so much for talking about the movie, and I hope people still find it on demand, even though we didn't get our fancy film festival premiere.
I think we're just changing our viewing habits too. And I think honestly, people are looking for new stuff to watch. So even if it's this premium video demand experience where you're paying a certain amount of money, the theater experience will always be there, but I think it's kind of an interesting time to really look at things. And movies, especially like indie films, they have a better place here because I'm sure you realize this, they kind of get lost in the shuffle sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I hope that people enjoy it in their homes. I think it's a really funny, sweet, special movie with an amazing cast. So I'm just grateful it got distribution, because I've been in other films that don't. So you never know when you're doing an indie film.
Yeah, it's really interesting with distribution, even with the Twilight Zone, which you got to do an episode of that, for example, that's out there on CBS All Access, brand new season. That was a really fascinating episode that you were in. What was it like jumping into Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone?
Well, I was so excited for a lot of different reasons, one of which is that my good friend Alex Rubens, who wrote on Community for years, is one of the main writers, producers on the series. So it was a chance for me to get to work with Alex again. And, I'd missed that since Community ended. Jimmy Simpson, I think, is an incredible actor. He also stars in the episode. So that was exciting. Obviously, anytime Jordan Peele asks you to do something, you feel very honored and lucky. So this is my second a guest appearance on one of his produced shows. So I was so lucky to be asked, and I thought it was a really interesting episode, and a fascinating character for me to play. And so the whole thing was just a dream.
What was the other project you did with Jordan Peele?
It was a series called Weird City that premiered on YouTube that he also produced. So that was the first thing I got to do with their company. And so Twilight Zone was the second thing. So I feel very lucky.
The other thing with the Twilight Zone and just Jordan Peele stuff is just like the simple eye contact that characters make with the camera. Like there's a spot at the end of the episode where, your character goes through the whole thing, and just by a simple look in the camera, what was it like just kind of playing with those concepts and especially finessing like these darker tones that we don't necessarily explore in other mediums?
Yes. Well, I mean, that is the true magic of Twilight Zone, as an institution across the decades, is these twists and reveals. And when you build up an entire episode that can then hinge on just a simple look from a character into the camera, and it gives you chills, that's really exciting. It's a challenge as an actor to figure out like how you modulate that look so it has the most impact and it doesn't feel like it's too much or too little. So thankfully I was working with a lot of great writers and director on the episode, who can kind of guide you there. But yeah, it was fun. I really like getting to do different genres as an actor. So this felt like such a fun, unique episode to do.
Speaking of Community, you mentioned that before. How about the fact that Joel McHale was on another episode this season too? I mean, that's a pretty nice coincidence there.
I know, it was awesome. Unfortunately, we weren't in the same episode, but I think he shot right before I did. So I saw his hair and makeup continuity photos in the trailer, and it felt like I was back on set. Yeah. I got to do a little Zoom reunion with the cast a few months ago. So I'm hoping that we get to do, an in-person reunion at some point. But yeah, it's really fun, the ways in which we're all still connected.
I just talked to Joel recently, a couple of weeks back, about the Twilight Zone, and my wife and I just started watching Community, and he was kind of taking me through the whole journey of the show, because it's like, just from where it started, like as a small budget thing. Then he was telling me about like the Parks and Rec rivalry too. Like there was a lot going on with that show that like now you can reflect and be like, man, that was a trip.
Well, also it was my first television show, so I didn't realize that it wasn't normal. Like everything that was there, Now looking back, I see just how like dramatic it was day in and day out. But at the time, I didn't have anything to compare it to. Yes, so it was a wild ride.
What were the best parts of the experience for you when you reflect on it now?
Oh, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the incredible cast, and a lot of us, it was one of our first television jobs. So it was the process of discovering who these people were and just how incredibly talented they all were. And I can't describe the experience of, sitting around the study room table, shooting the pilot, and just watching person after person just blow my mind with their talent and their versatility. And so that was amazing. And then also just the good fortune of being on a television show, which was kind of rewriting what a TV network sitcom could be. That was not my expectation when I went in. It was not sold to any of us as like, this is going to be a genre breaking meta deconstruction of what television comedy is. So that was kind of a surprise to all of us as it unfolded. And I think we as a cast got so excited and invested in the show because we saw what, the writers, Dan Harmon and all the writers were doing. And so we were on the ride as much as the audience was.
Yeah, you mentioned how meta it was, and I think we're kind of more used to shows like that now, given where we're at. And also, like, if the show just came out on streaming, like right to Hulu, right to Netflix, maybe it's received a little bit differently. Like, it was trying to be pigeonholed into NBC, and NBC was a certain way at the time. And your show was much different from that. So it's nice that it can kind of have the shelf life and people can appreciate it in a different way now, I would say.
Yeah, it's now on Netflix, and I feel like a whole new group of people are discovering it. So that's, gratifying. It only took like 11 years or something.
You're like, thanks guys, we've been here for a while.
You know, we were lucky. We made 6 seasons of that show.
Yeah.
You know, and there are many points along the way at which we thought we were going to get canceled. So that's a victory that we made over 100 episodes of it. So you know, it's there now for people to enjoy.
So how many times are we talking when you thought you guys were going to get canceled? I mean, out of the 6 seasons, every single season?
More than that, multiple times per season. Yes.
Wow.
I mean, our ratings were so bad that if we got over a certain level, the writer's room would get donuts to celebrate. And it was a low bar. I mean, it was, yes. We had I mean, I'm sure Joel told you, there was very few points at which we felt confident that the show was going to continue.
So then how would you compare that experience to Love on Netflix, where you do 3 seasons, like there's, I'm sure, a bigger budget, bigger staff, like there aren't necessarily ratings. How does that compare?
Well, it was completely different because when Netflix bought the show, they bought 2 seasons right off the bat. So we knew it was coming back for a second season before we even started. So it was such a wildly different experience. Just the kind of ease and confidence that gives you on set, of knowing that you're going to come back. And, you know, maybe it wasn't as dramatic for other people involved on the show as it was for me, given that I went immediately from Community into Love. Like I maybe had a week off. So I was fresh off of this experience of not knowing my show's fate week to week. So to go into a job where I knew guaranteed 2 seasons, it was completely different.
Yeah, a little bit more room to breathe there, I would imagine.
Yes. I wasn't like preemptory, you know, I wasn't packing up my trailer in anticipation of being canceled on Love.
How about playing that character, Mickey? What was most fascinating to you? Because she's certainly somebody that had a ton of layers.
Yes. Well, you want to be respectful of the character because she did have so many layers, as you said. And I thought the writing on the show did such a beautiful job of handling the various issues that she was going through. So I felt like it was my responsibility as an actor to try and do my best job. And so it is also very gratifying when you hear from people that show resonated with them, or that character helped them realize something about themselves, or they, you know, had a real emotional experience watching the show, which is, you know, not guaranteed when you're at the core doing a comedy. So I found that like very, very gratifying and inspiring to hear that from people who watch the show.
Do you feel like the show had more room to go, or were you at peace where things ended up?
You know, I do understand the kind of British TV model of making just a sort of shorter arc of a series overall and having fewer episodes per season. And but I am certainly curious as to what Mickey and Gus are up to. So, you know, and all the, I mean, and the supporting cast too on that show, Claudia O'Doherty and played Birdie, all these people. I mean, I thought it was an amazing cast on that show. So if they wanted to check in and see what Mickey and Gus and everybody was up to now, I would love that too.
That's cool. Why don't we go back a little bit? Why don't we talk about Juilliard? Because I feel like that was a huge part of your world. What sticks out the most in your memory when you think about it all these years later?
I didn't have like the best time there. It was sort of a fraught experience for me. So when you say, what's the first thing that comes to mind, you know, they used to have this probation system there where right before the holiday break your sophomore year, they would put people on probation, and then you knew you could maybe be kicked out of the school at the end of your sophomore year. And so I was one of those people put on probation right before the holiday break. So it was a very emotional, scary experience for me, but I do feel like it made me grow up in a lot of ways. And I started college when I was 17, and I was the only child whose mom was very involved, overprotective, some might say. And so I had a lot of growing up to do. I was also going from living in a suburb of Pittsburgh to living in Manhattan in New York City. And so I do look back and realize that I had a lot of maturing and growing up to do, but it was also pretty scary to think that you may be kicked out of college at the end of your sophomore year, and none of the credits transfer. So I would have had to start all over if that had happened. So yeah, I think of anxiety, uncertainty, self-doubt, questioning if I had enough talent to make it as an actor. That's what I think of.
Well, I appreciate your honesty with all this because it's obviously a very specific way that things are done there. Like, does that probation method still exist today? Because like
No,
that's ridiculous to me that that was even a thing. It's not even fair to
yeah,
put somebody through that.
well, they did. I think they did get rid of it, which I was very glad of because some people are certainly some actors who really. Oops, my AirPods disconnected. Hold
Yeah,
on.
I lost you for a
Can we
sec,
pause
but
again?
yeah, you're good. I got you back there for the minute.
Did they reconnect? Let's see.
I heard you before. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, now you're good.
Yeah, I think some students maybe were really motivated by that kind of like fear and the possibility of being kicked out. But for me, certainly, it really kind of shook me as a person, and I needed a couple of years after college to sort of put myself back together confidence wise. I went into college with not a lot of like technique or
Mhm.
real understanding of what an actor's process was, but I went in with such enthusiasm and love of acting, and I kind of graduated with a lot more technique, but it had kind of dampened my love and enthusiasm for acting, and now I was about to embark on a career as an actor and not quite sure if I wanted to do it anymore. So I had to sort of put back the pieces for myself after I graduated from college. But on the other hand, I didn't expect this profession to be easy. So I do think it gave me, I think, a very healthy preview of, the how difficult it is to be a professional actor. So I'm grateful for that I felt like I graduated expecting it to be filled with rejection and people telling you that you didn't get something that you really wanted.
It's a lot to take on. It's a lot to digest, especially at 17 years old, and then also especially coming from a small town. So, Gillian, we have a CBS Pittsburgh station, KDKA, that's a part of our
Of
group here. So I would figure
course
that
I
you
remember
know.
KDKA. Yes, KDKA, of course. I grew up with, yes.
So what do you remember
Um,
about growing up in the Pittsburgh area? Because like you did the acting thing, Pittsburgh Playhouse, your mom was involved in Carnegie Mellon. Like, what are the memories that come to mind there?
Oh my God, Pittsburgh had such an amazing, thriving theater community, and so many opportunities for kids like myself who had an interest in acting and theater. So I was incredibly lucky to take classes at the Pittsburgh Playhouse from the time I was about 8 or 9. I got to act so many times at everything from dinner theater, children's theater, all the way up to professional theaters like the Pittsburgh Public Theater, which is an incredible theater in Pittsburgh. And so for me, it was just so many wonderful opportunities to learn and grow. And that there's such a thriving arts community in Pittsburgh.
When was the last time you were back there?
Not recently enough, if you ask my mother. It's been a minute.
I hear you. But you still got the
She
good
has
memories from there. Yeah.
I do, I do, I do. I have so much love and appreciation for Pittsburgh. Yeah, my mother worked at Carnegie Mellon University for a long time, and so I would hang out there and try and pretend like I was in college when I was still in high school, and yeah, it's great.
I love it. So in addition to all this, filmmaking and directing is something that you're interested in. What do you kind of see as the future of stuff you want to tap into? Because there's a lot of different things to do these days. What piques your interest the most?
Yeah, well, I'm in a scripted podcast that's out everywhere. It's called Blood Ties. So that the second season of that is out now. So I'm really enjoying that. The world of podcasts. I've been directing documentaries for the last few years. So there's a new series on Disney Plus called 616 that's all documentaries about Marvel Comics. So I directed one episode of that that will be out this year. I think just kind of pursuing whatever my interests and curiosities are. As I don't have a concrete game plan, but I just keep trying to go towards things that pique my interest.
Good deal. Well, Gillian, thanks so much for hanging out. Best luck with the movie. Best luck moving forward. Stay healthy, and we'll talk to you down the road, all right?
Thank you so much for having me.